Strength training doesn't prevent injuries in runners. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Let's clear that up. I'm Dr. Ray Peralta, physical therapist, run coach, and exercise physiologist. Over the past 10 years, I've helped hundreds of runners rehab injuries, hit PRs, and run pain free. Today, I want to break down a common myth. There's a lot of debate, whether or not strength training actually helps prevent injuries in runners. I'm going to show you what the research really says and why strength training only works if it's done right. We're going to dive into why some research shows that it doesn't work, right? It's inconclusive. Why the most common mistake runners make, and how to strength train the right way for injury prevention and performance, and some real examples from some runners that I've coached. So let's get into it. So some runners hear that strength training doesn't help with injury prevention and decide it's not worth it. But here's the truth. A lot of these studies have major flaws. And when you dig deeper, the data tells a different story. So let's unpack the problems. Okay, the first one is inconsistent methods with their training protocols, right? If you look at the methods section of the research study, you'll find that the studies don't define what training to failure is or what the actual load or intensity they're using. Oh, they did strength training, but you're not sure. Are they, training to failure? Are they training before failure? Are they just training very light weights or heavy weights? So it's not really comparing a true strength stimulus, right? Are they just training muscles to maintenance? Are they Are they under training the strength training stimulus? Right? If you're not getting the right strength training stimulus, right? If you're just using very light weight, you're not going to see a muscle adaptation or response unless you're completely deconditioned. Like you just woke up out of the couch or a bed rest, and now you started lifting a 2-pound weight, and you haven't lifted a 2-pound weight in years. Then that might give you a stimulus, but the everyday person, their groceries might weigh more than that, right? There's not going to be enough of a stimulus. Mixed participant backgrounds, right? The people, the demographics of the people they bring into it, right? So the studies sometimes compare like untrained people with athletes, or they combine it. So then you're not getting the right, you're not seeing what's actually happened because when you're doing a training study, the beginners oftentimes may have bigger results than the untrained person. And then the athlete may not show a big enough of a result. And then if you compound this with the other issue of not using the right stimulus, like they're not training with the right weight for their ability level, then again, you're not going to look at, hey, what's actually happening here? Is this group of beginners, maybe they progress, but then they're also lumped in with a group of more experienced lifters, runners and lifters, right? People who do both. And then they're not seeing as big of a change with their program. So that may also mess with the results as well, right? If you're not having groups, a control group, and then the experimental group where it's like just beginners or just experienced runners, etc., that may mess with the results as well, right? If you're getting people of different backgrounds in terms of their training age. No standardized measures, right? They don't reliably track fatigue or muscle activation. So we don't know the stimulus that people actually received, right? So if they're doing this training study, but then they're not actually properly activating the muscle, as a physical therapist, so many times I've seen people who can't even activate their glutes properly doing, for example, a leg lift exercise, a hip abduction exercise. Then they're doing a study like comparing, oh, this hip exercise didn't really work to strengthen the glute because they didn't even have a proper idea of how to properly activate it. Then we don't know, okay, they're not even getting the intended results. So they're using another muscle group, but they're compensating with a different muscle group, let's say the TFL versus the glute medius, for example. And then again, that's going to skew the data. It may show that strength training had no effect because they never actually properly strengthened the glutes to begin with, right? So then again, they're not using standardized measures. Okay, are they using a percent of 1 RM? So a percent of 1 RM just means 1 rep max. Or are they doing 5 rep max? Right? Are they doing RPE, like a rating perceived exertion? Obviously, that's more subjective. Are they seeing total volume lifted, like sets times reps times the load, right? So it's like 100 pounds lifted 10 times, did it by 10 sets, so now you're getting 100 reps total, or they just do one set by 10 reps, and now that volume is a lot less. So now that total training load or volume on that muscle group may be different, right? So we're not truly sure there's consistency. So a lot of these studies, when they look at lump other studies together, they're trying to, again, comparing apples to oranges. And then also the hormonal effect, right? So high volume lifting without proper recovery can spike cortisol and then also drop testosterone and other hormones affecting adaptation, right? So if you're looking at a strength training study, but they're not, maybe they're overtraining or again, maybe undertraining, or there's other factors affecting their hormones. Maybe they're different age groups, right? Maybe they're postmenopause, other different factors that may affect how their body responds to strength training. And not to mention, if they've been doing the right types of strength training, that could also affect, what type of response they're getting from the training, whether they're actually, in fact, getting stronger, right? Or staying the same. And then also no control for lifestyle factors, right? If you're sleep deprived or under eating, your body won't recover, right? And strength training will look like it's not working as it's intended. If you're trying to get stronger when you're sleep deprived, you're not going to make that big of a gain in your strength if you're constantly sleep deprived. And a lot of these studies don't look at their lifestyle factors, right? How well these athletes are sleeping. Are they properly fueling? Are you eating enough food? Right? Maybe they're eating some carbs, but they're not eating enough food altogether. They're not getting enough calories altogether. Right? So if you're not controlling for these lifestyle factors, then it looks like whatever training they're doing is going to be no different than the control group. Like there's no difference because it looks like none of them really mattered because they just had like crappy lifestyles. So, for example, a 2024 systematic review by Wu et al. Found no clear link between strength training and injury prevention in runners. But here's the kicker, right? They only had a few studies and high risk of bias. And then the few studies actually showed some difference. Only three. I think there was like 9 studies total, and only 3 of them actually showed some kind of difference. But they were small, so very very small sample size, and then they were overpowered by the other studies that were included. So these small sample sizes, even though they showed some effect, because in the 3 studies that did show some effect, they were supervised. I mean, they were actually well supervised in the methods section. Like the people who were receiving the strength training sessions were well supervised, compared to other studies where there was lack of supervision, or they were just did it on their own. They were given a program and they were just self-reported what they did. So even though the strength training showed some type of effect, but they had such a small sample size when they compared to the other studies, it looked like there was not a clear link between strength training and injury prevention. Just because there's not enough good quality research looking at strength training compared to runners. But there is some other studies that do show that strength training actually works. For example, strength training reduces, this is just in all athletes, not just runners, but in a study looked at multiple sports, that sports injuries can be reduced by up to 66% with proper strength training. That each 10% increase in volume leads to a 4% lower injury risk, right? Lower risk of injury. Improves tissue resilience, right? How strong the tissue can adapt, how the joints control motion and force absorption, right? So how like a foot or a leg can absorb force, like for example, from a jump or when the leg's bounding up when you're running. And yes, it's safe across thousands of athletes with no reported adverse effects. It's very minimal risk of injury with strength training. So sometimes people are afraid of doing strength training with running because they're afraid it's going to increase their injury risk. Actually, not doing proper running without adequate strength base may actually increase your injury risk, and adding strength training will lower your risk of injury. So if you're tired of running injuries and want a proven way to build a stronger, faster body, I made a free training for runners just like you. I'll link in the description. So let's discuss how to actually apply this. So how to strength train the right way for injury prevention? One, start late in the very beginning. Obviously, going to go heavy, but in the very beginning, if you're completely brand new to strength training, start light. Maybe you start with body weight or start very light weights and learn proper form or proper technique, right? Every runner needs a familiarization phase, especially if you're brand new to strength training. Focus on form before loading up, right? Maybe spend a month or so getting used to the movement patterns, how to squat, how to deadlift. And then as you build up your confidence, then you can start testing what's your maximum. And then you can start looking towards benchmarks or goals, right? For strength training, for example, the back squat. If you're, maybe see if you could lift just body weight, let's say 150 pounds. Can you do a back squat of 150 pounds? And then after you hit that goal, can you go to 1.5 times your body weight, right? So can you just hit that goal and then continue to, and even if at 1.5 is pretty hard for you, I can at least maintain 1.5 times body weight just for a single rep, right? 1 RM or 1 rep max. All right, step 2, train consistently, not occasionally. So sometimes people will dabble in strength training, pick it up here and there, then let it go. No, you should be consistent. So in the off season, it should be like maybe 3 strength training sessions a week. And if you're very busy, it could just be 2. In the in season, while you're actively training for a race, 2 strength training sessions a week. And then while you're tapering the last week or 2 before the race, you go down to once a week. Low volume, you want to train your legs, but you don't need to train 3 times a week, especially on the race taper a week. Step 3, use the right exercises, right? So you're a runner, obviously you need to strengthen your lower body. Exercise like squats, split squats, lunges, deadlifts, lateral lunges, step ups. These types of exercises are gold. And you also want to start training heavy, right? Once you're past that beginner phase, you want to start training heavy, right? Maybe 8 to 12 rep max, even 5 to 6 rep max. At least start doing heavy lower body day or a heavy leg day. And then another day, you could have a power or plyometrics day, things like squat jumps, sled drags, burpees, more explosive type movements, power cleans, dumbbell snatches. There's so many varieties. You want to prioritize intensity over endless reps. You just want to do just random mindless reps. You want to have a method, have some intention to what you're doing, like whether it's a heavy day or a more dynamic power day. So ditch the fear of bulking up and train for strength, not just doing random exercise. Like, oh, I'm just going to do a random strength class and call it a day. No, you should have a really, a method to the madness, right? You should just not be doing random exercise. Now, there's nothing wrong if you just like doing it for fun, but it shouldn't be your main thing, right? If you're going to do like these random boot camp style classes, you can do that once a week, but then the other 2 days of the week, you should really have focused, targeted strength work, addressing your muscular imbalances, any weak spots, and just making sure, hey, your legs are strong enough. And if you need a goal, again, aim for at least 1 times body weight or even 1.5 times your body weight with the barbell back squat. And if you're afraid of the squat, you can also do the same thing on a leg press machine. And then step 5, adjust around your running plan, right? So pair strength training with hard run days, not recovery days. So let's say you have a speed workout, maybe do the speed workout in the morning and then do the strength workout in the evening. If that doesn't work with your schedule, do the speed workout in the very first, and then right after, do the strength workout. And then strength could be in forms of body weight, kettlebells, bands, or if you're at the gym, obviously you can do barbells or machines, whatever you have access to. Just make it happen. So this keeps your easy days truly easy, right? So on a hard day, you're doing the strength training and a speed workout. And then on the easy days, you just do easy runs. And then on long runs, you might just, on days where you do a long run, maybe just do the long run alone and then don't do any strength training on your long run day because you don't want to interfere with your long run. So one of my clients who's about a 4-hour marathoner, used to avoid lifting because she feared it would bulk her up. She thought it would make her bulky. That would slow her down. She was running about 5 days a week and constantly dealing with like runner's knee issues, calf issues. We just added 2 strength sessions a week, focused on squats, hinges, like deadlifts, core work. And in 12 weeks, calf tightness was gone, the IT band gone. And then she even shaved. She ran faster in her 10K as well, and said her long runs felt a lot easier, even on the hills, like those hill workouts, those hill sprint workouts. And that's the power of properly dosed strength training. You have to do the right strength training, because if you're just doing too light of strength work or doing these random classes, you're not going to get the right stimulus. So if you've been avoiding the weight room or doing endless body weight circuits of air squats, it's time to rethink how you train and strength training as a runner. So strength training, when done right, doesn't just prevent injuries, it makes you stronger, more efficient, and more resilient runner. And if you want help dialing this in, click the link in the description for my free training, my free video training on running pain-free. Let's help you run faster and stay injury-free for good.